Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Carol Henry, and I want to welcome you to the second part of Module 1, The Power of Your Story. In this module, we will learn the importance of your story. And yes, we all have a story, and that story is core to who we are. We will be digging deep in this section because often the actual story we tell ourselves is buried in our subconscious, and it's hard to recognize because it's often like the fabric we are made up of. And it's like a comfy old shirt. We default to being our stories whenever we are triggered by our old memories. By the end of this section, you will begin to reveal the story that you have crafted for yourself and are currently living your life by, no matter whether it fits your current reality or not. Stories give us meaning, context, and understanding in a world that is often chaotic and disorderly. And a story unexamined has the power to get in our way. It can block our path to becoming the women we hope to become. In order to understand our story and how it's influencing our life, we really need to unearth that story so that we can become aware of what is influencing our choices. We need to be aware of how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we see our place in the world, and how we see what opportunities exist out in the world for ourselves. So when I ask you, what is your story? What's your immediate response? Are you aware that you have a story? I'll tell you what my response to that question was. I felt like I didn't have a story. My life has been good. I had a great, blessed childhood, no big traumas as far as I knew, and basically all had gone okay. But no great story as far as I could see. And you know what? That actually feels very bland, very neutral, and not very insightful. Wow. I think that means I'm actually boring and not much to say. And that became my story. But when I told my husband this, he really laughed. He thought, that's crazy, Carol. Of course you have a story. And I've been hearing about your story since we first met. And so he offered to tell me my story as I had been sharing it with him through our years together. So I ask you again, do you know your story? Would you like to know your story? To get started in this, I want to share a little bit of the history of mine and many other women's stories. But first, let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I can't do X because I'm not that sort of person? Or I am the way that I am because this is what happened to me as a kid? Or I'm too something for this and not enough of that for that. So just fill in those blanks with things like, I'm not creative enough to be a designer, or I'm not tall enough to play basketball, or I'm too fast to be relaxed. That's who I am. I'm too young for this. I'm too old for that. I'm too fat for that. I'm too smart for that. Well, if these are familiar ways of viewing yourself, then it looks like you've been a victim of your own story. Since the beginning of time, human beings have told stories to make sense of the world and their place in it. We all have personal stories that we've been creating as far back as when we were pre-verbal. And we can thank our parents, our caregivers, our community, society, and all the other important people in our life who have had a big influence on how we see the world, how things are. And they don't mean to be telling us that, but we absorb it as our stories. These narratives are based upon what we've observed, what we've been taught, and our direct experiences in life. And both the beliefs, observations, and values that come from it shape and reflect who we are at any given moment. Since our brains are definitely wired for stories, more of that in the next segment of this module, we need to be aware of a few things. First of all, It's simple brain science that our brains are wired to default to the negative. They sniff out danger automatically, reinforce our past experiences and what we already think to be true. We know this as confirmation bias. And so the danger is that we easily get stuck in the past. And so we don't just tell our story, we become our stories. Being stuck in our story has the power to limit our vision, the opportunities that we see for ourselves, and the women that we become. We get boxed in. And I'd like to share a bit about the history of women that influenced me greatly and who I am. In 1969, I went to a talk on women's lib sponsored by my university. Do any of you remember the term women's lib? It was a topic of the time for me. I had read and heard about bra burning. In fact, I had participated in some of those events. I had read every edition of MS written by yours truly, Gloria Sternum and Dorothy Pitney Hughes. And of course, we all felt very lucky to have the pill available to us. And accordingly, we became the free love generation. This lecturer, a young American woman, talked about women's issues and how much our lives will change when women become equal. Some boys could be heard at the back laughing and mocking her. They didn't like those ideas about the future where men will be doing dishes, laundry, and even taking care of babies. This woman was fearless. She took on these boys and told them and all of us that we better pay serious attention because long after all the other important issues of our times were resolved, like the Vietnam War, nuclear disarmament, racial inequality, well, that hasn't happened yet. This powerful women's lib movement will continue to change our lives more drastically than anything else. In fact, she said, it will prove to be the major issues of our life. That was the late 1960s. And here it is, 60 plus years later, and what just happened? Roe versus Wade. We're getting louder and louder, though. We're not putting up with this. We have the Me Too movement, and the list of strong, powerful female leaders looks much like this. We see how well leaders like Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, Angela Merkel, the ex-leader of Germany, Tsai Ing-wen, President of Taiwan, and the late RBG. And yet, even though they've done so well, let's look at these stats. By mid-career, men are 70% more likely to be in executive roles than women. By late career, men are 142% more likely to be in VP or C-suite roles. All the research, data, and stats seem to support not only what I experienced myself as a female leader in higher education, but also what I hear from many of my female friends, colleagues, and clients, no matter their age, years of experience, nor their place in their organizations. So all of this self-doubt and second-guessing is an internal game, one that often doesn't show up on the outside. Throughout my career as a leader in higher education, I was constantly struggling with second-guessing myself. I often wondered, what is enough? And when will enough be enough? I now know that my story had so many ingrained unconscious beliefs about women who speak up, women who know and ask for what they want, women who are strong and don't take shit from others. Every decision, every choice for me seemed to be up for second guessing. Oh my gosh, so exhausting. I had had it. The troubling thing was that if you had asked me about my beliefs about women, myself, and the world, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that I had self-limiting beliefs and a story that was influencing how I would show up and what opportunities I was able to see for myself. I was really quite confused. Who am I, and will I ever be enough? And that's proven also to be true for so many of the women I coach. They don't recognize that their own stories about themselves are full of gender stereotypes and unconscious bias that have them second-guessing their choices, believing that they may be sacrificing too much for success, and feeling way too stretched. The result is that their story, in fact, significantly creates self-limiting internal barriers that sabotage not only their careers, but their confidence, their self-worth, and most importantly, their satisfaction of peace of mind in both their personal and their professional lives. And that's why we're here today. No matter how good things look from the outside, things can feel quite messy on the inside. Do you have a mean girl judging and evaluating you every step of your journey? Are you sick and tired of negativity, stress, and anxiety? Can you see that your story may be getting in your way? Let's review. Do you work harder than most of the men in your organization just to level the playing field? Doesn't work. Do you feel like nothing ever feels like enough? Are you often late and don't make it at all to family and friends events? Do you feel anxious and stressed much of the time? Do you wonder maybe I've stretched myself too much in the name of career success? Does fear seem to rule your life? Fear of failure, fear of missing out, fear of not belonging, and on and on. And so it is, throughout our lives, we gather evidence to add to our stories until it becomes loaded with all the ways we don't fit in or we don't make the mark. Left unexamined, that story and the beliefs that underpin it get in our way and hold us back from shining brightly and becoming the women we want to become, reaching our potential. I realized that as I understood how my own story got created and how it impacted me, and that if I didn't unpack it, the past would always be in my eyes. And given how the brain works, my current reality would always be a reinforcement and reflection of my past, not a way to move forward into becoming the woman I'm meant to be. And so I'm compelled to help other women look and see how they too have been telling themselves stories that were actually preventing them from becoming who they wanted to be. So let's get to looking at our stories. Let's reveal our stories so we can see our patterns and what's getting in our way. And there will be no more second guessing. No more muting our voices to fit in. No more smoothing the waters in the face of conflict. No more supporting others at the expense of standing up, speaking one's truth, and taking action. And no more sacrificing all that makes up a joyful, satisfying life in the name of career success. So this is your roadmap. You are here where the little pink heart is. And that's where we are right now. And it's time to unearth our story. And here's how we're going to do that. You can do this in your journal, or you can use the downloadable PDF available to you. So this is what we're going to call our success work. You are going to build a storyline. First thing you're going to do is you're going to divide your life into 5 equal segments. And in each segment, you're going to describe yourself as you remember you. Describe one positive, important, memorable event that has impacted you. Describe one negative, important, memorable event that has impacted you. For each of these events, describe what you believe about yourself, girls and women, the world, and your place in it. Now look at that line. Stand back. Do you see a theme? What is that theme? Now make a note in your journal of your themes that seem to make up your story. Any questions? Email me. I'll get back to you. And I'll see you in the next module. Bye for now.